Well, thank you everyone for coming out, and mostly I'm going to answer questions, but I'll just just talk about a few things. So the village is doing great. We've really righted ourselves from where I was. Oh, and by the way, Trustee Katsinas is here, and congratulate her on her victory here. So she's going to remain a trustee. So back in 2017, when I first became mayor, and I got in and I saw a lot of things that was like, oh boy, we got some issues. One of the big things is we were projected this year or next, to be minus 8% in our operating reserves. So the operating reserves is the extra money we have in case, in case of catastrophe, or in case somebody doesn't pay us or whatever. It just gives us some cash leeway, much like you do in your house with an emergency fund. And so the target's always been to keep that above 20%. Well, it was at 30 when I got here, but the projections were it was going to be minus 8 this year. We were going to already have dipped into it, used it, and be, short money. Obviously a bad thing. And I said, how long have you known this? Since 2012. And there was no action being taken. So we took a lot of action. It was the early retirement. We cut just about everything we could cut. We got rid of a lot of, a good example is our clerk's office went from 5 people, it's 1 now. So there's a lot of things that were being done that, probably shouldn't have been. And so we cleaned a lot of that up. Our roads were, we did an assessment in 2018. I said, hey, we need to assess all of our roads. Because to me, the best way to fix your roads, well, one, you need to know where they're at, but two, I always hear, oh, well, you spend money in my area because, or in that area because they have money, or they don't pay as much tax. You hear this all the time. Believe it or not, even in a town the size of Orland Park. Best way to do it is to rate them all and say, hey, these are the ones in the worst shape, these are the ones we're going to fix. Well, it turned out 40% of our roads were in poor condition, our local roads. So that was clearly a problem. Our parks, I think of our 56 parks that we had rated, I think 30 some of them were in poor condition, or actually probably in the mid-20s. So we had, these are things that we had to address. And so in the last, well, really since Cindy got on board, because frankly, actually spending on roads and parks, I was blocked from doing anymore. John Humphrey was supposed to be redone. It was blocked. For political reasons, whatever, it doesn't matter. The good news is Cindy, Mike, and Bill were elected, and literally the first meeting, they're supposed to be celebrating, getting sworn in, enjoying themselves, kind of be an easy meeting. No, we had, because I had a whole list, and we had like 4 or 5 things that day we approved. And actually, by the end of the week, you were accused of committing crimes, correct? Yeah. So, but committing the horrible crime of, hey, spending more money to fix your roads, right? That was the horrible crime that you were accused of. But the good news is, all that we've done, we went from fixing 1 park every 2 years in the 10 years previous to me. By the way, we got 66 of them, so you do the math, that's 132 years. That's clearly too long of a cycle time to get through your parks. So we fixed, by the end of this year, we will have fixed, since 2019, we will have fixed 26 parks, renovated them. Our roads have gone from, we just did a new assessment last year, went from 40% in poor condition to 17% in poor condition. So we made really big headway, and with the plan we have for the next 5 years, we're expecting that to get somewhere between 5 and 6%, which is kind of more normal and actually manageable. So, so we've done a lot of good things, and our reserves, remember I said it was supposed to be minus 8% this year, we actually had 51% reserves, and we're using that money to help do more capital projects, to more parks, more roads, and all that kind of stuff.
51% of what?
51% of our operating fund. So if our operating budget, to have reserves of what, so if our operating budget is $60 million, so we've got $30 million sitting in there, right? So when we really want to have 20%, so I think we're taking 17 million of that and putting that into capital projects, because that's the big thing we have going on. The next 10-year issue for Orland, next 5 to 10 years, is that a lot of capital projects that have been back to 2000 were deferred. The parks and roads being one of them. Also ponds, we had a 5-year plan to get those. We have about 30 ponds. We have 330 ponds, and 30 or 40 of them were considered what they call, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the worst, 30 or 40 of them were 5s. We're trying to get all of them repaired and trying to get everything a 3 or above.
Flood control ponds? Yeah, these are your detention ponds and all that, just overgrown with Phragmites.
Yeah, ours has already got algae all over.
Yep. So those are the types of things that we maintain. There's like 330 of them. So there's a lot. Yeah, we are. But one of the I don't know how many we're doing this year, but a bunch. We spent a lot of money on ponds. So vehicles. Our average age of our vehicle fleet was 14 years. Think about that. I mean, and that includes police vehicles that we don't keep up more than 5 or 6 years. So we have just all of this has been pushed down the road for a long time for a lot of reasons. There was $64 million put into an apartment complex, a lot of money put into that triangle. And combine that with the fact, one of the biggest things we face is that the local government distributive fund, which probably nobody here knows what that is except for Cindy. Anybody else know what that is? Some of you probably heard me talk about it. So that is, back in the 1960s, when they put an income tax in, the state said, we're going to share 10% of that tax with municipalities, but we're going to do it on a per capita basis, which, I mean, we obviously don't get back what we put in because we're more affluent, but I think that's good because it takes the politics out of it, right? So in 2011, they reduced that to 5.5%. Then in like 2017, they said, oh, we're giving it back, and they raised it to 5.8. Then the next year they raised it to 6. We're at like 6.06% right now. To put it in real dollars, we've, since 2011, over $50 million we haven't gotten from the state. Well, again, that's money we could use for capital. We can't. The bad news is we use it for capital because we have other economic activity. A lot of towns use it for operations. So you've got Harvey, Posen that have made their police force almost nothing. In some cases, there's some towns to the east of us that don't even have a police department, and the county basically comes in and oversees all that. Well, obviously that's a problem for those communities, but they don't have the money because like Harvey's losing $2 million a year. That's real money to them. I mean, it's real money to anybody, but to them, it's a huge chunk of their operating budget. And so there is a push. Since I've been mayor, it's been the #1 issue for all mayors. There's a push every mayor's caucus in the state. It's their #1 goal, and #2 is like, #1's here, #2 is like down below the pavement as far as how important it is. And
get back to the 10%.
Get back to the 10%. Last year they had 60 House members, I think, and 50 Senate members or something like that that sponsored a bill to do that, and it was stopped by the governor and the Senate president. They don't understand, oh, you don't need that. We've given you cannabis money, and we've given you, and I'm like, well, first off, cannabis and gaming, well, first, we don't have cannabis, but they share some of that with us, right? I think it's like $300,000. $6,300,000. That's the governor and senator's math. My math is that's a big loss, right? So we're hoping to get some of that back, which will hopefully help us going forward. Aside from fixing roads and parks and doing all that kind of stuff, the other big thing that we've got 2 big projects. Is one of the things too that we look at as a village board is you're paying taxes. Yes, you want your roads fixed. Yes, you want your parks fixed. We need to do what we need to do, but also there are projects that are for the good of the community that people will benefit from. So I'll start with this one. We did a survey because that's the other thing. We've gotten a lot of data since I've become mayor. We've went out and got a lot of data. So we had a community survey of all of our parks. Like 65% of the people said Schuessler Park needs to be addressed. By far, it was over double the next park, which is true. It basically floods all the time. It's unusable. For those of you who don't know, Schuessler Park was built in the early 60s. It was the first time, so the then mayor, why it's called Schuessler Park, then Mayor Schuessler got the developer to give money, or to give that land as part of the whole Fernway subdivision over there. Well, anyone who knows what that land is, or Fairway subdivision, as part of that project, they gave us the land, of course, that was the least developable, right? So it's the flooded land, it's where the pond is. Well, volunteers, so the then trustee, later Mayor Dugan, had a lot of ties to big equipment and construction, so he got some time donated and some equipment donated that they could use. And volunteers went out. We had the sod farm here in town. They donated the sod. We had the big hardware store. They donated the fencing. Everything was donated. And the community went out and built that park.
But obviously it wasn't engineered the way they engineer things today, and it served its purpose for a long time, but now it's flooding a lot, and so there's, there's issues there. So, so we need to address it. It's about a $10 million project or so. Half of that is actually storm water issues. So it's making the pond bigger, dredging the pond, and doing that. So what we're doing here is we're basically, so this is the ball field that's there now. There's a sledding hill here, and this is an early drawing, but it hasn't changed much. There's just a few minor changes. But there's a sledding hill here. They're going to actually, and that's popular. So we're going to move that dirt over here, put the sledding hill in the back, and give it a ramp that's accessible for handicapped and kids that couldn't otherwise climb up the hill. So there'll actually be a walkway to get up there now. The pond is going to be expanded, so from this line out to here, and cleaned up so it can hold more water. Then we're going to put 2 turf fields there. So, and basically the football program has been around since '74 and has never had a place to practice. We've shoved them on baseball fields and all these other things. Well, anyone who knows anything about football, if you put them on baseball fields, one season of football practice, those fields are destroyed. And these won't be destroyed because they're turf. And when it's wet, they can practice. And it's plenty big enough for them to do all that they need. Right now, they play their games at Sandburg. I think they'll continue, but we're still going to put bleachers in case they end up having to play here on a Sunday. We're also adding parking. So there'll be parking added here. It already has this parking. Believe it or not, it had the 3rd most parking of any of our parks. It'll now have the 2nd most parking of any of our parks. Just Centennial has more parking. So, and there's been traffic studies and all of that regarding the football. And so this will be done, and it'll be done this year. The plan is for these fields to be up and running by mid-September, and the rest of the park to be completed by the spring. So now these areas, there's a couple of additions here that will get added later, and those will probably be done internally because they're just, like a park, just a playground area and things like that. So they're a little bit easier to do. So you've got that big project going on. The other big project is Centennial Park West. How many of you have been out to Centennial Park West for a concert? Anybody? So Centennial Park West was approved in 2003 for a band shell and built to be an outdoor theater. The problem was, it really wasn't built right. They ran no electricity, which anyone who could think about that, well, how are you going to have speakers and amplifiers? So everything's run off a generator out there. It also gets very wet down here. In fact, one time we had to move the concert over here to the parking, okay? This hill that you see here is here right now, so it cuts the venue down in half. So we're going to move that hill back. There's a walkway right now that goes like this. This walkway's here. So what they're going to do, we're going to expand this walkway, put another walkway around on this side, build 20, there'll be 20 pads that are 20 by 20, so 20 by 20 is the size tent at the Taste of Orland. Okay, so, and it'll also have some areas for smaller tents, but so basically Taste of Orland will move here. So that's our biggest event. So Taste of Orland will move here, and you have a permanent stage with dressing rooms and all that, and a loading dock in the back, so we don't have to rent a stage every year, and it'll be paved so it's not getting torn up by vehicles. That's going to be ready for next year. So Taste of Orland, Market in the Park, all of our concerts will move to this venue, which when you think about it, Taste of Orland, there was a concern about parking. Like, we do Taste of Orland over here, and we use our parking lot. We don't have any parking. Between these 2 Metro lots, we have almost 3,000 spaces. So it's a great place to do it. Our July 4th, we'll move the concert portion over to here on the other, so it's just, because it's right on the other side of the tracks. But basically, this will be the place where we do all that. That's what was always envisioned. It was approved in 2003. I actually lived not too far away from that, about a block and a half. And before I even bought my lot, I knew that this was coming, or supposedly coming. So we're basically completing something that just was never completed. It'll be a great venue for us, and there may be, like Polish Fest has used this space, they'll probably still use it. But we'll probably do some of the concerts will be ticketed, and a lot of them will be free. But basically, all of our events are going to move over to there. Because while we're doing Market in the Park over in the Triangle, the reality is if that develops, that'll all change. So we need to move that. So those are kind of the big ones. And again, this is supposed to be done next year. And one of the things we did for that we had taken about $50-some million of debt off the books. And so we were able to bond for these, and we saw that interest rates were going up. Even though the projects were this year, we bonded last year in about April. It saved us about $2 to $3 million in interest rates if we would have waited till now. So we saw it coming, and we just said, hey, let's go bond for this now ahead of time, because we know we need to do that. So, but those are kind of the big things that are going on. Public safety wise, I just saw the stats. I guess I can leave this up. I just saw the stats for last year. Not surprisingly, crime's up just a touch. Property crime, we had the lowest crime we've had in 27 years. I think this one will come in the third lowest this year, but ticked up a little bit. Violent crimes, we're still going to be the #1 in the state as far as towns over 50,000 for violent crime rate. We did go up from 19 to 23, but almost all of those 23 are assaults against officers. So they're not against, the previous year about half were assaults against officers. So we still keep the town very safe. That's not to say we're not very, very, very busy. One of the most important things we did is we put in a TRU unit, TRU. We call it the Targeted Response Unit. The guys that are on it call it the Tactical Response Unit. Whatever floats your boat on that. But at the end of the day, their job was to be proactive, to get people off the streets before they commit a crime. Okay? And they are busy. They are busy because a lot of people with a criminal history, this is the only place to shop south of I-88, right? So they come here to shop and eat just like everybody else, but they don't commit crimes here because they know they're going to get caught. And so we've gotten a lot of people, I think in the last 2 years, almost 200 off the street before they committed a crime here, where they had weapons and things like that in their vehicles. And it's just from traffic stops and the stuff that those guys do. So I'm not downplaying the fact that we're not very busy. We are. But our department keeps us very safe. And that unit that was put in 2018 is, is a big reason why. The other thing we have is we have a mobile response unit which handles mental health calls. Some of you may have heard me talk about it before. It was a federal grant that ran out after 3 years, and then we found other funding for it, but it allows us to have 3 mental health workers basically that we contract out to. And if we get a call, if our police officers get a call and it's mental health related and nonviolent, they call them and they take over the call. And the important thing about that is our police officers are the only ones that can involuntarily commit someone. Fire can't do it, our guys have to do it. So if they have to involuntarily commit someone, it's like 5 hours that they're off the street. Well, involuntary committals have gone down 35%. So that's guys on the street, and those people that aren't being committed, if they're going through that process, they are now in the criminal justice system on the worst day of their life. And so now we're getting the help they need without that happening. So it's been a positive for everybody. So it's really helped us a lot. So those are a couple of things that we do there. But with that, I'll open it up to questions you've got.
Mayor, do you have any just general idea, if not statistics, of the people who are apprehended in Orland Park for violent crimes? How many live here?
For violent crimes? Almost all of them are here. They're all domestic almost. I mean, we did have well, even recently, we had a shooting, thing that we had. That was out of town, but almost all.
I guess my question is, to what extent do people come into the village from outside?
So almost all, like I said, almost all of our violent crime are domestic disputes. So we had 23 violent crimes last year, 19 the year before, which, I mean, you think about that, that's less than 2 a month in a town this size. That's not, and I think, I'm not exactly sure, I think 15 or 16 of them are assaults against officers, so those would be somebody from out of town. But beside from the ones that are assaults on officers when they're trying to apprehend somebody, it's almost all domestic disputes.
And with burglaries and...
So most of our crime, so I think this year we have 801, and I think you're going to see that 600 or 780 of them, or 798 of them, are property crimes, and most of that is shoplifting. Most of that's people from out of town. I mean, shoplifting, we've had that. If you go back 25 years, we had more crime than we have now from shoplifting. One of the things that we put in place is
we've always had in our liquor license laws that you have to cooperate with police or we'll take your license from you. So we had an incident where someone came from 143rd, they went to the Walgreens, 143rd and Will Cook. It's our Walgreens just on this side of it. And they went in and they stole $1,000 worth of liquor. And they were stealing it. She said, I know you're not going to pay for this. Please stop. I'm calling the police. He says, honey, go ahead and call the police. And then he rolls out, jumps in a car. We get there. They called us, of course, and then they wouldn't sign the complaint. To be blunt, I was pissed. So was the police chief. And I said, Chief, as I recall, there's a thing in there about having to cooperate with police. So I said, go cite them for conduct unbecoming a liquor license holder. And I said, and send them straight to a hearing. Usually your first one of those, they gets handled administratively. It doesn't come to me. But I said, bring it to me. And so I fined them, I think it was $5,000, and suspended their liquor license for a couple weeks or a week. And they were pleading not to have that suspended. I said, oh no. And I said, you're lucky the other two have separate liquor licenses, or I would do all three of your locations. Guess what? Now they sign complaints. Guess what? Haven't had any issues since they started signing complaints. So one of the lessons learned from that was we don't have that phrase in our business license portion. And, you know, and like at the mall, we'll have, Macy's won't sign a complaint, but Von Maur would. Von Maur doesn't really have much of a problem. Macy's has a huge problem with you know, shoplifting. So I said, let's put that clause into our business license requirement. So we did. Macy's, same thing happens. We cited Macy's. They got fined at our, it's a different, it doesn't come to me, it goes to a different court. They got fined once, they got fined twice, and guess what? Ever since then, they sign every complaint, and guess what? They don't get any thefts anymore because the criminals know they're going to get caught. I mean, it's not really rocket science, it's pretty common sense. And that's what we did. So we made our businesses, because we want them to file every complaint. So when you see 800, we're demanding that they sign complaints. So it's not some kind, you know, you've heard people out there saying, oh, it's not the real number. It's the real number. Even if they go to our municipal, and a lot of these, they're petty theft, a couple $100, we send them to our municipal, it still counts as a crime, whether it goes to Bridgeview or not. But this way we don't have to send our officers to Bridgeview to spend all day. We keep them close to home and on the streets. And even if they're over here at a hearing, God forbid something really bad happened, they could immediately be back out on the street if we needed them. So, so those are some of the things we do.
How long do you think it's going to be before Pizza's open?
Pizza's going to open next year, supposed to open spring or early summer.
Okay.
They've been delayed with all the product delays and everything else, and then cost escalation and all that, but that's their plan is next year. There's a lot of stuff that's going to open next year. That's going to open next year. Silver Cross is going to open next year. So.
What's Silver Cross?
Silver Cross at 171st in LaGrange.
Oh, I saw that.
There's a building going up there. It's a Silver Cross, and then there's another building they're planning to do for the future. They own that land as well. So it's a 46,000 square foot medical office. I think it's Smith Pronger. Way back when they merged with them, and as part of the merger agreement, they had a period of time that they could not operate in a separate location. They had to be in a Silver Cross location. Well, that is expired, so they want to move them, because they started here, they want to move them back into Orland Park.
Is Loyola also in Orland Park, or is that?
Loyola is actually in Tinley. It's just outside of Orland. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of medical down LaGrange Road, which is good. DuPage, Dooley is which is the worst name ever. They're looking as well, so we have a lot.
What's the latest with the cultural center? Will it be there, or?
The cultural center has a couple $1 million, a few $1 million worth of work that would need to be done to make it serviceable. So we're going to demolish it, and we are going to, and so it's going to come offline in December. Those programs are going to go over into the Labey Center and the Civic Center. It's going to become kind of a recreational campus, and we're going to demolish that. And then what we're looking at right now is plans to add pickleball courts there and some lighting, because we've heard about tennis and pickleball not being lit. And so it basically make that park nicer, basically. We've already got the parking lot. We're going to use that space to improve the park.
We're doing Schussler Park sports activities in the night. Is there going to be a time limit when they'll shut the lights off?
Yeah, I mean, all of our parks, I don't know exactly what the time is, but all of our parks have the same, have a similar issue because we have lights all over. So we do the same thing. And they're kids, they're not there that late. So usually, I mean, when you're talking field sports, it's going to be kids, so I can't imagine, nothing's going on beyond 10, usually. And I live by Centennial Park, and, there's no lights on after, say, 10 o'clock, usually. Sometimes games will go to 10:30 or whatever, but football practice isn't going to be like that. So, it's not like this is a baseball or whatever where these fields have a kind of little smaller use.
I have a question. There's a lot of trash along LaGrange Road from 131st, and it goes all the way down. And I wonder if they're gonna, it's trash on the sides of the roads, and it just sits there. And I just wonder, is Streets and Sanitation gonna...
So they're not our roads. And actually, if we go on those roads, we can actually, the state will go, so if we go on those roads and do work, sometimes, they will actually come back to us and sue us and say, oh, these damages were you, and blah, blah, blah. So we don't have jurisdiction. And the state, unfortunately, even with COVID, like IDOT, they're still only going to the office 1 day a week. Now, their maintenance guys are out now, but that's been a problem, a huge problem. So we try to augment it where we can. And then the other problem you have this time of year is none of those maintenance crews are working all winter. They're all doing snow plowing. So you're always going to have an accumulation of trash in April, unfortunately. But the IDOT crews and the Cook County crews should get to those Cook County and IDOT roads. If you see anything like that, you can... Thank you for coming. Your hand?
Thank you.
If you see anything like that, you can report it through our 311 system or call Public Works and let them know. And if it's our jurisdiction, we'll get someone to clean it up. If it's not ours, we'll call the people, we'll call IDOT and stay on them to get it cleaned up. But this time of year, most of those crews aren't working yet. So you're always going to, and every April, right, Cindy, we hear this, oh, trash, it's horrible, it looks horrible. It happens every time this time of year because none of these, they're all doing snow plowing. No one is cleaning trash off the sides of the roads in December and January because usually it's piled with snow. So they're doing snow plowing. So that's starting to shift right now. Even our parks. I mean, the first thing we do with our parks is get our fields ready to play because the kids start using them. They started using them like a week and a half ago, supposedly, but the rain slowed that down. So the first thing we do is get our fields ready, then we get our crews out there cleaning up the parks.
So I call 311?
Yeah, you can go to 311, you can go online as well. There's a place and you can just...
In IDOT. And the other one is 83 in the forest preserves. People are dropping like tires, they just dump construction.
People are not considerate, but Route 83 isn't even anywhere near Orland Park.
But
so
is that another IDOT?
It's a state route. And believe me, the state doesn't like it, I don't like it. I mean, we've all seen it. Many times I wish I was actually an officer because I see someone, I'm sure you've seen it, throw a bag out their window. It's just nothing. There is almost nothing that aggravates me more than that because that is just completely not caring about anyone else. I mean, how hard is it to stop, when you stop at the grocery store, carry it and put it in the trash bin that's there? I mean, it isn't. It's just a complete disregard for everybody else.
As long as we were kind of touching upon the state, the Southwest Highway flooding issue, which has been, I know you're well aware of that issue between 131st and
Yep.
South. Have you seen any improvement by the state taking? I've noticed there's been a lot of land clearing going on in that general area. Is that part of the state? So
there's a long history. There's a long history there. So I got here and there was an issue. Then we had our 2 highest rain Mays, and it made it worse. And we had a couple of meetings. And, IDOT, and this is what IDOT told us. They said, well, Cook County Forest Preserves, they won't draw down the slough, because the slough holds a lot of water. They won't draw down the slough. Well, little do they know that one of my biggest clients when I used to have my business, my biggest client was Cook County Forest Preserves. So I called, my contact over there, who's now the number 2 guy over there. Actually, he's number 1 guy leading all the maintenance. He goes, that's not true. He goes, we want to draw down the slough. They won't let us. He goes, we want to draw it down in October so that it can hold things in the spring. Well, lo and behold, we got them to agree to let them start drawing down the slough, and that made it so when we had an incident, we had 1 or 2, and they were really small incidents.
because guess what? That slough can hold a lot of water in the spring. So now they're drawing it down. So that was number one. Number two, we identified where the issues, there were 2 sinkholes that blocked culverts that went out from underneath. Our engineering department actually designed a fix, which IDOT's crews put in. And since that time, which was last year, I don't think we've had any flooding. So it has solved it. Now, in the meantime, they were supposed to advance, there's a project to redo that whole thing that would have fixed the flooding. They were supposed to advance that and start that 2 years ago. They still haven't got to. Imagine if they actually are letting it, I think, in April. So it's actually going to start this year. So that should completely solve. It's going to raise the road quite a bit. And the clearing that you see is in preparation for that because they know that's coming so they could get some of that land clearing done. So that's what that's for. But there is a project, it's funded, it's got all, you know, so it's been engineered, all of that. I think they had some right-of-way issues, getting some right-of-way stuff, but basically, and now there's no urgency from them because it's not flooding anymore, right? So, but that's what's going to happen over there.
I live in Catalina section, and my street is Chestnut between Larkspur and Narcissus. It's the holiest street in the world.
Well,
When's it going to be done?
Okay, so we have 22 square miles of streets, so I don't know when your street is going to be done. But Bonnie, if you can get the information, she can tell you. I think that area is getting done this year. I'm pretty sure. Because some of that area has already been done, and then there's another area. But we're doing a ton of streets. And again, it goes back to you know, we evaluate them all, and the ones that are in the worst shape are the ones that we do. Now there's some fluctuation in that, like in Cindy's neighborhood. There's what we call 3 different neighborhoods there. 2 of them were in really bad condition. One was in, could have waited 5 years or so, but since we were there, we just did them all, kind of thing, right? So there's some of that. There's also roads like Fernway and Laguna Woods. They were annexed in. They don't have the proper infrastructure. They're different. They have ditches. So it's different construction. So we also balance that because we could take a couple of the worst roads and reconstruct them. If we did all the worst roads and reconstructed them, then nothing else would get fixed, and they would turn into roads that need reconstruction. So what we try and do is make sure that the roads that only need a couple-inch layer, we do those, and then we slowly pick off the ones because some are so bad they need reconstruction. But I'm pretty sure Catalina is just getting a redone. But one of the reasons for not getting into your subdivision as well is the water project that's going through there. So there's a water project going through, you've probably seen it, 143rd. So that water project, and we're not past that yet. So they want to get past that because there's going to be big equipment driving on all that. So they want all of that to happen before they go into those roads. So that's another reason why potentially it was delayed. Like Wheeler was really bad, and we ended up putting just a 1-inch layer to buy us a few years because we're doing so many pothole repairs, because Wheeler's going to get completely rebuilt as part of this project. Didn't make sense to rebuild it again. Okay. So there's some of that too.
Yeah, I'm right on
But Bonnie can get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question on who I can contact. We're a new subdivision. We just became an HOA. And we have several questions about taking over this pond maintenance at some point. So who would be the contact that I would ask those questions to?
That would be Public Works.
Public Works, okay. And the other question I had was, there's a landscape plan that had to be approved when that was built.
Which subdivision?
Tall
Okay.
with the Marth Builders. So
Yeah, it's not finished yet, right?
Yeah, the last building is going up, but we became an HOA about 6 months ago or 3 months ago. And I just need a copy of the original landscape plan because we're going to have to figure out what's...
That was Development Services.
Okay, Development
and before we accept the subdivision, we will do a final inspection and make Marth replace bushes and do those types of things. And they have a bond that and Marth's a good builder, so we won't have a problem. They'll do it. But they, you know, if a builder, we've had builders, you know, skip out or whatever, we take that letter of credit or we take that bond and we execute it, and then we contract out to have work done.
The street that they put in the final?
Yeah, there'll be a final lift. All that stuff gets inspected before. The subdivision is not inspected yet, is not ours yet.
Okay, is that Public Works or is that?
So Development Services inspects that. Development Services and Engineering, and then but Public Works is the ones that can maintain the pond.
Someone there can tell me when.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
So, okay.
How's that, what's going on with that, like I-80 there, that, I didn't hear anything about that strip of land there where you were gonna get together with the other cities, and try to work something.
Yeah.
So we get some.
So you're talking about I-80 corridor. So the I-80 corridor is, and we do have, we have a group called the Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance, a partnership with Tinley and Mokina to try and bring development into that area. The problem is we're in the state of Illinois, and businesses are not exactly moving to Illinois. So we do get inquiries from time to time, and the one thing is that we don't want trucking and logistics. There's plenty of places in Will County for trucking and logistics. Will County doesn't want trucking and logistics because it's the last corridor they have to do something else along a freeway. So all three of us have agreed on that. And so since we won't take trucking and logistics right now, there's just really not much going on. I mean, you know, people aren't in offices anymore. They're trying to figure that out. So no one's going and building offices. So that's basically, now early on, the issue was more, we had a couple people interested, but it's also a landowner, they've got to sell and all of that. So we have issues on that. So that's going to be longer term, but as I've said before, the worst thing the village can do is take bad projects because they're forever. We can always say no, and we can always wait. The village is going to be here after we're all gone. The village is still going to be here. And if it develops in the future, fine. But I think Illinois is going to have to straighten out. And what you see happening in Chicago, you just saw Walmart, you know, a year ago it was Target. I mean, you know, and there may be some opportunity in the suburbs as well, so we may see something there, but no, they don't. So.
I see, I'm just guessing that revenue from the mall is probably down, but I see all these new stores and companies going in on the Grange. That must have
so our sales tax revenue is up, and the mall's up. The mall's a top 1% traffic mall. It's fully leased inside. The only issue we have is the Sears building. They were going to put a theater in there. The COVID basically killed it. They actually had started work inside. And then COVID killed it. AMC stopped building anything. I think AMC survived, but they didn't know that they were going to survive. It's been bought by a company called CubeWorks. If you looked them up, you would see everything they've done and you'd be going, eh. And we have the same reaction, so does the mall. But this has been expressed to them, and they actually are looking to do something way different here than what they've done in other places. So we're excited to see what they come back with for that last piece. So is the mall. The mall invests in the area, and we talk to them. I mean, we know they need to invest in the Ring Road, and because they own it. There's some things there that we've been pushing them for as well. But again, they're a top 1% traffic mall, top 10% earning mall in the country. So it's not going anywhere, and it's still doing pretty well. And we have to protect it. We have to make sure that that area continues to do well. You've got both the Robert Morris buildings have medical offices going in there. They've taken, believe me, they've started work 3 years ago. They're just unbelievably slow getting them done. But I'm looking forward to those being open, and then we'll see more development. You know, Yasani Jewelers went in over there. Obviously, you had where Toys R Us is. You had all that done over there. So, and then we've got we talked about Pete's. Steinhoffel's is going in, Bed Bath & Beyond, and what, Steinmart. So they're taking both those spaces. So 95,000 square feet.
Is that because companies have more confidence in Orland Park? They feel like
yeah, there are.
Good old air crime is down. New laws to help shoplifting problems.
So Orland Park, Schaumburg, and you know, those are, you know, so Naperville, Schaumburg, Orland Park. Those are the big areas that you see that everybody, they all want to come to. And like BJ's, they said the first place we want to go is Orland Park. That's the first store they open in Chicagoland area. So a lot of restaurant groups, the first place they want to come is here. So, but yeah, it's all of those things. The fact that we're a safe community, the fact that we keep them open, all that, and we're, you know, that we value our businesses and we don't drive them out, like what Chicago's doing right now. Those are the types of things that bring them here. It doesn't mean we won't have some leave, because that happens, but overall we're doing pretty well. Any other questions?
We need more police officers.
So when I talked earlier about all the cuts we made, the one department that didn't get a single cut was police.
So we've kept all of our police. So, so we have a pretty good structure. I mean, our police department would always say they could use more officers. The issue is you got to pay for them. So, you know, and then that means something else doesn't get paid for. So back to the state and, you know, them not giving us money, all the capital projects and all of that. So, but our crime is, you know, if you looked at the last 3 non-COVID, because COVID, things were down a little bit, and obviously because of COVID. Last year, this year, and the year before COVID are the 3 lowest combined years of crime that you'll see since we've been tracking it for 27 years. So.
What's the name of that fund you were saying that the state?
It's the Local Government Distributive Fund. And it's basically, it was instituted in the 60s when they instituted a state income tax. And the whole idea was they didn't want Chicago, really it was Chicago, instituting their own income tax because they knew what that would do economically. Brandon Johnson doesn't know that, but back in the 60s they knew that. And then in 2011, they decided because the state was broke, they decided to start taking from the municipalities. And that's the problem, is that, you know, in your schools too, you hear, you've all heard Pritzker, you've heard others, oh, it's schools and they're you know, the property taxes, and believe me, I don't want to see our school property taxes go up. Our schools don't have any other choice. They have all these mandates, and the state's supposed to fund a majority of our schools, okay? I think District 135, they fund 8%. Majority means 50.1 to me, and they fund 8%. So what are they to do? Now, there's still plenty of stuff they're doing that is not fiscally sound, in my opinion, but still, it makes it very challenging. And the same thing with all these communities. And the problem is, maybe Orland can survive it, but all these other communities are getting destroyed because they're not getting this sharing. And it's the people they're purporting to help that are being hurt the most because they don't give their local communities the dollars. And yeah, we all hear the horror stories of, you know, the corrupt town. There's 1,400 towns in Illinois. And by and large, the best government you get, the best spending you get, is right at your own backyard, the thing that's closest to you, because they know what your problems are. And yes, obviously there are towns that, there are a handful of towns that find themselves in the newspaper that do things wrong, but most towns don't, and we certainly don't. So I feel blessed. I think we have, I think we do government right here. I think we're a model for the rest of the country, not just the Chicagoland area. I think we do it better than anyone else does now. And I think we have the best board of trustees in the whole Chicagoland area, bar none. I have a great board of people with different experiences, different ideas. They all pay attention. They all look through our stuff. There's not a lot of disagreement because, believe it or not, on most issues, the solutions are really obvious. And what gets people in trouble in my job or Cindy's job is, and it's quite frankly what they did in the first 2 years to me. They stopped John Humphrey for 2 years. Schuessler Park would have been done 2 years ago if it wasn't for them stopping John Humphrey. But all these things have to happen in succession so that we can get, you know, we can't take all our fields down at one time, right? So they put politics first, is what they did. And if you look at a problem and you do what's right, do what you, and this is the way we all, the certain way I operate, I know it's the way Cindy and the rest of our board operates, do what you think is right. Do the right thing. Of course, there are political ramifications for that. You're going to be attacked. You're going to have this, that. Do what's right, and then figure out how to deal with the political issues that you got to deal with. But you can always go back to, I did the right thing. I think that's a heck of a lot easier than making a decision based on politics. And that's what we saw with things like John Humphrey. That's what we saw when they tried to block spending more money on roads. It's a no-brainer to get our roads fixed. It was a no-brainer, right? That's what we saw when they kicked the can down the road and put us in a position where we were going to have minus 8% reserves. They knew the problem was there, they just didn't want to address it. Because being quiet, they don't have to make any cuts. They don't have to cut programs that don't make sense, like leaf pickup. How many of you were impacted by leaf pickup? Any of you? 13% of the town got leaf pickup. You probably didn't know that. We were all paying for leaf pickup in 13% of the town, okay? We were going to have to spend $1 million on new equipment for leaf pickup, and we had to roll all those guys over to pick up leaves instead of doing other things during that time. My thing was, either we do it for everyone, or we do it for nobody. And Public Works was like, we don't want to have anything to do with it because it's very expensive, takes up a lot of our time. Well, to do it for everybody would have cost us $6 million in equipment, and we'd have to hire about 50 more guys just to handle leaf pickup. Makes no sense, right? But they didn't want to make those decisions because somebody who lives over there and get leaves picked up might be mad. Like, well, it's still the right thing because they have to look at the village as a whole. You know, I mean, the Centennial Park West is a good example. These people here, a lot of these people are really upset that this is going in here. The problem is, this was approved in 2003. None of this existed. I'm the second longest. There's one guy in the condos that have lived in this neighborhood longer than me. Okay, that's it. And by about a month, he's lived there longer than me. Everyone else, and I knew when I bought in 2004 that this was coming. We've got people that bought in 2022 that were complaining. I'm like, we've already had concerts since 2011. You moved here. I mean, and you know, again, if you took these people out and you moved them a half a mile away, they'd go, oh, this is a great project. Our job as a board is to look, and there's another person that lives in this neighborhood that's on the board too, and she said, our job is to look at what's best for the people as a whole. I personally think it's great for the neighborhood too, but regardless, it's good for the village. It's good for the rest of the residents. So, you know, that's how we have to look at things. That's why I like the fact that all of our trustees are elected at large. There's a difference. Some towns do it by aldermen, like Chicago does. Imagine that in Orland Park if you had 6 districts. All the fighting about, I want money in mine, I want money in mine, as opposed to, let's evaluate it all and fix the areas that need the most fixing that make the most sense. Any other questions? Well, great. Well, I thank you all for coming out here. It's a great turnout and great day. And thank you very much for Yasser for hosting this. He's hiding back there. So please come visit Gaston's. It's one of my favorite lunch places, and dinner too. It's great. And you're open for breakfast too. So there's just a lot of breakfast places, Yasser, so I just don't come here much for breakfast. But I'm here, and they're only open for breakfast and lunch. You're open for lunch and dinner. So, you know, so please come, you know, please come here, bring people here, because it's a great little restaurant. We hear all the time, oh, we don't have any mom and pop restaurants. That's just absolutely not true. We have like 70 of them that are family owned in Orland. The thing is, they're here. They're not on LaGrange Road because the taxes are too high on LaGrange Road. Only the corporations. I mean, quite frankly, City Barbecue just left because they raised their rents, probably because of the taxes, right? So, and I think they were doing fine. They're looking for another place in Orland to go to, right? But you got, you know, Fatty's around the corner. You got a lot of small mom and pop places, but they're in different locations. They're not on the main drags, and so please, you know, partake in them because they struggled through COVID, and I know they, you know, us keeping them open made a huge difference for them. They were able to, as I said, they didn't thrive, but they survived, and now they're starting to thrive. So please get out and support them. So thanks again for coming. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.